Just imagine some 12 random men who claim to be the disciples of Jesus show up at your house and tell you, "So our teacher told us to tell you that his time has come, and so we are having dinner at your house tonight." Blessed Holy Week, my brothers and sisters in Christ, and let's dive into the Word. In today's Gospel, we first witness Judas agreeing to betray Jesus for just 30 pieces of silver. Continuing from that, as I mentioned earlier, the 12 apostles, following Jesus' instructions, prepare for the Passover, Jesus' Last Supper with them. And then during that dinner, while they were eating, Jesus just mentions in passing that one of them is going to betray him. And that really bothered them, as it should. They began asking, "Is it me? Is it me?" Then in verse 25, Judas, even though he knew he was the one who was going to betray Jesus, asks him, "Is it me?" Brothers and sisters, Judas and the rest of the 12 apostles who walked with Jesus during his ministry on earth had the voice of conscience speaking to them directly. Yet, even they were still questioning, "Is it me?" I'd like to go a step further and bring up Peter. Later this week, we will witness Peter also denying to be an associate of Jesus, even though Jesus already told him that he was going to do that. 3 different people confronted Peter about being a friend of Jesus, but he outrightly denied them. It wasn't until the cock crew, and when everyone stopped talking to him, and when there was no more audible human voice around him, only then did Peter realize what he did. His conscience convicted him. Sometimes we feel like we need to audibly hear the voice of God, as audible as my voice speaking to you right now. St. John Henry Newman mentions that the conscience is the aboriginal vicar of Christ in the soul. Our conscience is literally God telling us what to do. I would like to quote Bishop Robert Barron from one of his recent sermons. He says that we hear the voice of God in our conscience telling us to do difficult and spiritually demanding things. We can't escape from God, and likewise, we can't escape from the voice of our conscience because it is in us. When we refuse the call of our conscience, trouble ensues us and everyone around us. But when we follow our conscience, as painful and as challenging as that might be, enormous grace is unleashed. St. Paul calls us in Philippians to have the mind of Christ. And since the Spirit is within us, he is constantly speaking to us. Jesus made Judas and Peter examine their conscience. And we know how both those 2 circumstances ended up. Likewise, every time we sit in our conscience and attune ourselves to the presence of God, we can notice him constantly speaking to us. The Catholic Church beautifully explains this in paragraph 1776 of the Catechism. It says that deep within his conscience, man discovers a law which he has not laid upon himself, but which he must obey. Its voice, ever calling him to love and to do what is good and to avoid evil, sounds in his heart at the right moment. For man has in his heart a law inscribed by God. His conscience is man's most secret call and his sanctuary. There he is alone with God, whose voice echoes in his steps. Brothers and sisters, we are now entering the most sacred and holiest period of the liturgical year. Tomorrow, as we celebrate Holy Thursday, and as we sit in prayer and waiting with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, we are invited to allow God to speak to us in the conscience of our hearts. Let us use this sacred time to really listen to what God is telling us. If we find ourselves easily distracted, maybe we could have a pen and paper or even the Notes app on our phone to just write down everything that God is telling us. I urge you to use this time to discern an area of your life that has been on your mind lately. Remember, our conscience doesn't tell us to choose an easy or simple path. Our conscience, the voice of God, leads us towards the difficult and spiritually demanding path. Our duty, like Jesus, is to listen and to obey. Have a blessed Holy Week.